It's about a giant, a basketball giant. Part fable, all real. His name was Wilt Norman Chamberlain. They called him the Big Dipper. 7 feet, 1 inch tall, and as athletic as any man who ever walked the earth. You try guarding that on a basketball court sometime. He played the game like no one had ever seen. He did things no one might ever see again. Like that night, 50 years ago, when he scored 100 points. That's right, 100 points. The game wasn't on TV, just some pictures remain. But you better believe that night lives on in the memories of those who saw it and will never, ever forget it.
The most amazing scoring performance of all time. 100 points for the Big Dipper.
This is where it happened. The sleepy little town of Hershey, Pennsylvania. Best known not for basketball, but chocolate.
In the summer when we were out of school, that factory right over there, the chocolate factory, you could tour. So as kids, we would tour that factory about a dozen times a day and swipe as much candy as we could get, come across the street and sit and eat it. And then we'd go over again, and after about 10 times, the guide would say, all right, you kids have had enough today.
It was a company town.
About 75, 80 years history in that factory, and thousands and thousands of people worked there.
You worked in there?
Yeah. I worked in there for 43 and a half years.
It's amazing. For a couple weeks.
Earl Whitmore, Kerry Ryman, and Larry Wagner had lived in the Hershey area their whole lives. When they were younger, the Philadelphia Warriors and Wilt Chamberlain used to hold training camp here. The memories are as clear as ever.
I'll tell you a story about Wilt. When the Warriors were breaking camp after their training camp was over, we always had a game between the varsity basketball of Milton Hershey against the Warriors. The Warriors run a play and I get picked, and now I'm guarding Wilt. In one motion, he picked me up, put the ball through, then set me on top of the basket. And he had a big smile on his face. He was a very strong man, very strong man.
People still tell stories like that about Wilt all the time. He was superhuman on the basketball court and everywhere else.
One sports writer likened the first sight of Wilt to the first sight of the New York City skyline. It was majestic, whether seen from up close or afar. You just kind of went, wow.
Wilt was a Paul Bunyan figure, mythic in what he could personally do.
He was Goliath, the strongest basketball player that ever lived. Case closed.
When he made the moves with Arnold Schwarzenegger, they were in a weight room. And Wilt says, well, how do you do that? And Arnold goes, well, this way you do it. You push up. So Wilt lays down on the bench, gets up under it. Bing, 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 bing. As Schwarzenegger never came into the weight room with Wilt again.
Wilt and the Globetrotters were invited to the Kremlin, and they're having dinner, and they start bringing in the vodka. And so they're taking these shots, and the Globetrotters are fading out. They're putting their head on their arm on the table, and it's down to the last two. Well, who do you think Wilt's left with? Nikita Khrushchev.
One time we were talking, and he has all these scars on his arm. So I says, Wilty, how'd you get those scars? He said, man, I was going cross country, and I stopped for a break, and this mountain lion jumped out over a rock and jumped on me. And I grabbed him, and he scratched me, and I killed him with my bare hands. I said, come on. He said, yeah, it's true. And he did so many great things, I kind of believed him.
On the court, Wilt was also a marvel, and I know that as well as anyone. By the time he came to the league in 1959, I had won 2 titles with the Celtics, but matching up against him was a whole different deal. We played 142 times over the next decade, and along the way, we changed basketball forever.
Over the history of the NBA, that's probably as dramatic a matchup as you've ever seen any time. It was like 2 titans of the game meeting, and you'd have headlines, and Russell versus Chamberlain, and the papers and the fans and everyone played this up.
I found myself watching those guys while I tried to play, while I tried to guard Havlicek. They were characters. They both had goatees, and they were both a product of their time, which was the 60s, and they were a little radical in their attitude, and they were the league.
I'll never forget that time and those games against Wilt. A lot of people assume because we played so hard against each other, we hated each other. Nothing could be further from the truth.
We were very, 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 very close. He'd come to my house at Thanksgiving, and he'd bring Sam Jones and Casey Jones, and they'd have dinner. My mother would cook them dinner, and then Bill would go up to my bed and fall asleep. When he'd come back down, my mother would say, now, William, you take it easy on my son tonight. They'd go out there and they'd beat us, instead. And then, my mother would say, we're gonna invite him to dinner no more, no more.
Wilt loved to tell stories like that. Stories that may not sound true, even if they often were. And that's what's so perfect about the night he scored 100 points. Because all the mystery surrounding the truth has always kept people wondering how it happened.
There's a great mystique about this. Let's be honest about it. Nobody knew where the hell they were. Only one guy was there to report it. There were always questions about the game.